I was in the urinal, a guy next to me goes, would you be interested in doing some radio? And I'm like, well, how about we wash our hands? And he pulled all his interviews for the whole country.
Oh, right.
So I felt terrible for people.
So that was
But
because of you.
beautifully, my producer, yeah, because of me.
It's become so big over the last, what are we up to, 11 years now?
Yes, Big Freeze 11. This extraordinary thing started by the Danaher family around their kitchen table. We're now an epicentre for the world here in Melbourne.
Well, sitting in the special chair today is one of the most recognisable names in Australian radio history, but he's also now the CEO of FightMND. Matt Tilley, welcome to the dos&d show.
Boys, hello. Thank you for having me. This is my first ever podcast in a leather chair.
In a leather chair. Well, you
Yeah.
said it was nice and comfy.
It does feel very nice and comfy. I feel like you should hear the sort of tinkling of ice. John Law's style.
Cigar.
Just a bourbon and Coke.
Oh, mate, we said we can, the
No,
boys can
no,
sort you
no.
out with whatever you like
I'm
as the show
strictly
goes on.
professional.
Yeah.
It is 10 past 12.
Yeah, so we might hold that off. You said podcasting is pretty lazy these days compared to
Yeah,
the
very
world that you
lazy.
came to.
God,
so
you guys have got it so easy. So lazy. Just talk for an hour. They'll find something they like.
Literally. Do you miss radio at all? Do you miss the hustle and the bustle and the grind?
Well, first let me point out I'm being flippant there when I say that. It was often very difficult to try and cram something into 3.5 minutes. So you could talk about chips and Coke being handed out the back of a Toyota, But do I miss it? Oh, look, I miss so many things about it. But, there's lots of things you go, well, I was ready to move on. Yes, I don't want to wake up at 3:45 in the morning all the time. It's harder now. It's wokey. All kinds of things that I'm not going to die on a hill about or I'm angry about. But I'm like, I think I was just lucky to be in it at a time that worked for me.
Yes.
But I miss the money and the holidays. Absolutely.
Well, you said, I mean, it's funny. We've had the privilege of sitting with a lot of media personalities, both over the last 20 years or even in the landscape now, and they've all got different opinions about radio, where it's going, where it's been. You use the word wokey, for example. So where do you currently see it?
There you go. That's going to be edited into a promo.
Hey, clip that up now. Talking about this sort of, where do you feel it's going in the next kind of...
Well, it's interesting because if you talk about radio, it's precious and it's completely arbitrated now by social media and hysteria and panic and companies reacting to the whimsy of where people's attention is and then weaponizing that and threatening to pull advertising.
Yeah.
We've all seen that. But I feel like with podcasting, it's all being stolen back now and it's all on, and I used to say this all the time if people were upset by stuff on radio, it's free. You don't have to listen.
Yes.
So, procure your own listening habits. And if stuff upsets you, then just find something else. Podcasting is that like writ large, which is great because people can get back to being themselves again. And if you don't like it or it's offensive, I don't think that's a reason to shut it down. Just find something else.
Yeah. In terms of that, what were some of the things over the years that you have seen, today, in today's day and age, you probably wouldn't be able to get away with now?
Oh, heaps of obvious things. Just doing accents and impersonations, right? So
Doss's favourite, by the way.
Oh,
Loves them.
any accent, I do laugh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
that's terrible for me.
And it's, look, I'm not here to rationalise or justify it, right? Okay. At the time, I was never malicious. I don't consider myself racist by any means. And usually most people who came up to me and said they loved this accent or that accent were Indian or were Russian or whatever. And, I'll never forget this gorgeous Indian family come out today and they're like, oh my God, we love your gotcha calls. We love that character. But why do you always do Northern Indian accents? Why can't you do some Southern ones? And I said, look, guys, I feel terrible here. It's just what I can do. And that was where I started to think about it and go, oh, right, okay. So, maybe what I think is just a bit lighthearted and fun has different repercussions for different audiences. And that's okay. If that's where people are at now, there's other ways to entertain and be funny, I think, but also find your niche.
Yeah.
On that though, I think, do people even realise, even with the CDs, that you sold the CDs, and we're talking about that recently, is that was, that CD was
150,000
used to the ground, that CD in our car. Like, it just brought so much joy to our family. But
I beat Madonna.
but the money you raised for charities.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I am where I am now, to be perfectly honest. Not that that's an excuse, but that was totally about. I didn't make any money out of those. That was to raise charity and do stuff, which cynically I also thought would build an audience and some loyalty and probably drive sales a bit. Just like we do with FightMND with 10 cents from everything of pork at Coles, you know. I think if there's a decision to be made, you go, well, there's an easy Christmas present and I can feel good about it. And yeah, whether people know that or not isn't really important, but I was lucky enough to get a breadth of experience where, like one of the CDs we gave only to charities that would never get any money. And sometimes it was just $5,000. And you just meet these amazing people who are dedicating their life to maybe a playground for kids with, you know, disabilities and learning difficulties. And you think they're just out there sweating it every day. And this $5,000 has changed their life.
Yeah.
And yet for someone like the Salvos or whatever, $5,000 probably wouldn't even pay for the envelopes they sent out.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not having a go at them.
No.
But I was saying, and so I met all these great people and ended up, you know, speaking and hosting a lot of things because I was cheap. I was free. You know, all their events, emceeing them, and walked into sort of a couple of board positions with some bigger charities because of, I don't know, people I met and the connections I made. So it worked really well for me.
Going back almost to the
Did
start.
that answer the question, or did I just go off on a whole
No,
tangent
you
about
absolutely
myself?
did, and that's a great thing, mate. We just love chatting and hearing you speak. But doing a bit of research on you, and especially when
Not Wikipedia.
no, not
Did
Wikipedia.
you find out where I was conceived?
Not
That
Wikipedia.
that was on Wikipedia for a few months.
Where was that? Where was it?
Aspendale, in a flat above a pharmacy.
So who was running the Wikipedia? Was it you? Was it?
Michelle Laurie, when I was working with her, she squeezed that
Yeah,
on there.
of
And
course she
usually they
was.
shut that stuff down pretty quick.
Yeah.
But I think it was her, yeah.
So how it works? So is it true you can just put anything?
I don't know. I've never tried because I've
Yeah.
always thought if you got caught trying to change your own, how shameful that would be.
I don't want to say it.
A few people have been caught.
Well, we had a guest on a few. We'll tell you off air, but we had a guest, quite a well-known guest on our show a few weeks ago, and there was a lot of social media comments referring to the Wikipedia page that apparently
Right.
he or she was doing themselves.
Do we have a Wikipedia
Because
page?
it's got all the little bits at the end I don't really understand, like the citations, right?
Yeah.
Where you've got to prove stuff. Mine is wildly off. But as I say, I feel like if I went to correct it, it'd be like this Google alarm and be like,
it's too.
he's
yeah.
up himself, look at this. So,
Well, let's see how factual some of our information is. We'll be able to fact check as we go along. And Connor's there. I mean, he'll fact check this as we go as well. But going back a little bit, so you talked about characters and even just it was interesting to hear you talk about actually writing for radio and grabbing
Yeah.
Dee and those kind of legends of radio. But getting your start, I think it was about 21, 22 years old. Tell us about you getting your start into the wide world of radio.
well, it was interesting. Actually, mightn't be interesting at all. You feel free to advance the podcast.
We'll jump in.
No, I was doing a lot of speeches at 21st, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a thing now. It wasn't so much for my kids, but back in the day, the big nights were the 21st, and shitloads of effort went into the
Yeah.
speech, and it was just a massive roast. So I would do a lot of impersonations of names at the time. People you probably know Richie Benno.
Of course.
You know, there was Darren Hinch who was on TV and
Yes.
stuff like that. And I was at a 21st once at this yacht club and had done the speech for a mate, and I was in the urinal, and a guy next to me goes, "Did you think about doing this?" And you reckon that went a bit long? And I'm like, "Oh my God." I said, "Mate, I'm sorry. It's just, I don't know you. It's
Yeah.
just a speech." He goes, "Would you be interested in doing some radio?" And I'm like, "Well, how about we wash our hands and head back out to the party?" Anyway, this guy sort of kept ringing me, and he was like, "You know, this is an amazing opportunity." I'm like, "Look, no disrespect, but I don't really know what FM radio breakfast shows are. I grew up in a house where my dad listened to classical music. I'd done the Melbourne uni comedy review with someone, I don't know if you've heard of her, Kate Blanchett.
No,
So,
no.
yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
I think of the word trajectory when I think of her and I being on a stage together. Anyway, and so he kept saying it's a great opportunity, and I'm like, okay, but why would I get up at 4:45 in the morning for no reason for something I don't really understand? I was in a share house in Carlton with 3 mates, and he rang me, this guy, and he goes, "Look, I can probably give you $100 a day." Like, that was insane money. I was like, yeah, let me think about it. And so we had a house meeting. I said, "Boys, they're offering me $100 a day to do a job, but I don't even really understand. I've got to get up at 3:45. But we were in a house just off Lygon Street. It was a heat wave, and we only had 3 power points for a 4-bedroom house. It was about to be bulldozed. And they're like, "Just do it for a week so we can buy a fan." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And that was literally the start. I went in there. I didn't really know what I was doing, and they just sort of said, "Oh, you know, look at the newspaper and write some funny jokes as if it's like a newsreader's going to deliver them." And it sort of kicked off from there.
Wow.
Such a disappointment. That's almost an anticlimax, that end.
No, absolutely not.
Well, then you obviously are in there. How does it turn into you becoming, the host of your own show? Like
Well-
Tracy and Matt was the first one for you. How does the call come about?
Well, here's what I think happened. So there was like the DGen, who were the precursor to Working Dog on Triple M and stuff. And radio back then was a lot of sketches, a lot of comedy sketches, a lot of jokes that were sort of inserted in and amongst the hosts. They weren't necessarily the talent that was doing the comedy. They'd be like interesting, fun people, and they'd be like, and now it's time for a sketch.
Yeah.
And I think what happened was, I don't know, maybe they got a sense, and I was doing writing for shows like Fast Forward and stuff too, like working with legends, Peter Moon and Magda and Michael Veitch and Steve Vizard. You can Google all them if you're curious. And I guess what happened was, I'm a bit of a natural storyteller, and I guess as much as writing comedy, I kind of used to muck around in the office and stuff like that. At a time when radio started to become about that, about storytelling and things like that. And I sort of, they were keen to push me on air and to do that. And I was like, no, I don't want to talk about my life. Who would give a flying whatever? Like, I'm a comedy writer. Let me do voices and sketches and stuff. So I didn't really like it at first because it just felt a bit like, mate, we've all got lives. But
There's a very young Matt Tilley.
Oh, right, there you go. I didn't know you had pictures. Very young. Looks like I borrowed Ray Martin's hair there. But for some reason, a guy called Brian Ford, he must have just pushed me on it. And so I would just tell stories about what happened down the supermarket or, an argument I had at the traffic lights. And that was a sort of time where radio was growing out of that. And I'm not saying I invented it, but I was lucky to be good at it at a time when that was what people were looking for.
Well, the relatability piece that is radio now. You can see it, you can hear
I
it.
invented that.
Well, there you go. But there's a great story which I'd love you to share about, when 9/11 happened, you guys were on air and you had to almost speak about what had happened and relate to the audience and almost not, I don't want to say share the news, but it was such a huge thing and will be forever. But how was that?
Well, that was very confronting back then because I think most people in comedy don't ever want to be serious. Not back then, they certainly didn't. It's definitely changed now. And I reckon I was one of the first people to sort of get comfortable with it because you've got 3 hours to fill every day. No one's that funny. Oh, Hamish and Andy probably close. Actually, no, they only do 2 hours. But to go back a bit from that, my very first show with Tracy Bartram, where I was kind of like the name on the show, Lady Diana died in a car crash the night before. So we had to kick off our first day out of that before 9/11. And we tried to be sort of funny for half an hour, and then we went, oh, this is just horrendous. And there's just a pall over the whole audience and no one's calling. We had an interview with Will Smith that we'd recorded the week before and we just played it 3 times in a row. So for 9/11, that I will never forget that because I get up in the middle of the night. I just was listening to the radio news. And I was like completely by myself in the house. My wife and daughter at the time were asleep. And I was like, ooh, I wonder if is that a big, I just didn't have the context, right?
Yeah.
Hadn't seen the footage, turned the TV on and went, oh man, I better ring my boss. I think this is pretty big. And I rang him and he picked up the phone straight away. He said, we're in here. See you when we do. And I was like, oh, okay, this is massive. But I always think back, God, how did I not think it was massive? I think I was just disoriented in the night. It was work. And we got in. I think we stayed on for like 6 hours.
Oh my God.
And,
wow.
For an FM radio show that was sort of zany and mucking around, trying to find people in New York to talk to. And in the end, it wasn't about us talking. It was about letting other people talk.
Even here in Australia, like hearing people here share that.
So many people had family and friends there. So many people were just, freaking out. The world had not really seen anything like that.
Yeah.
So they were just talking about how they were going to explain it to their kids. How do you go to work? What's happening with planes? Like now, historically, we sort of go, oh, it was just limited to that awful moment in New York. But at the time, there was absolute panic.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
The world just stopped and went, is there anywhere else where this is going to happen?
Especially with the time span of different planes going in different parts of the country and the rumors.
Do you want to know a boring fact about that happened in the world when everybody stopped in panic? I heard this the other day because I love podcasts. So the world kind of stopped and shipping traffic stopped too. And they've monitored this and they reckon for the 2 weeks after 9/11, whales have never been healthier and happier and more moving around stuff because all the engine noises of ships going through the water. So all their They record sonar activity between
The
whale
noise
scientists
pollution.
did, and
Yeah.
it just went. It was like bing. It's like whale orgasm on all the, all the recording scales and stuff. And then it sort of shrunk away again. They couldn't work it out. Then they went, that was 9/11. That's when
Wow.
all
Look what we've done.
plane and shipping traffic stopped.
I mean, that's such a good example because, I mean, we'll probably never experience something like that again, like
I
to the
hope
point
not.
of, well, we hope not, yeah. But how do you shift your mindset on it? Because no one can prepare for that. So how
No.
do you, when you go in and now you're on the airwaves and you're delivering news, you're talking to obviously distressed people, you don't know what's happening, no one knows what's happening. How do you actually then present to a wider range of persons?
Well, I think you've got to be honest, and I think everybody who's a performer or an entertainer or a host or whatever likes to think they're not going to make mistakes, likes to think they know all the answers, likes to think they're presenting as pretty infallible.
yeah.
And, me too. I don't want anything to flop or to look like, oh, he's lost for words there or doesn't know what to say. But if you're just going to be honest, I think that is where the relatability stuff comes in. So that's letting your emotions sometimes play out. That's saying, oh, look, I don't really know. Are we doing the right thing here?
Yes.
And then also radio more than anything else, letting other people talk and respond to them rather than you thinking everything I say is the most important thing that's going to come out of those speakers. It's more about what can you curate that actually is interesting but not you.
Time, Dos, just to freeze this episode just for a moment.
Okay, yeah, freeze M&D, well done.
We are going to get
Well
into
done.
that in just a moment, but before we do, let's have a quick word from our friends at Fleet Plan Hire Solutions. Dos, who are they?
Fleet Plan Hire, well, where do I start?
Yes.
Any project that you have or Bryce has or even Connor over there in the corner or Sammy over there as well and Jared's over there too. If any of us have a project, say out on the job site and we need a bit of machinery, we need a truck, we need something to help us get the job done, Fleet, they provide it. So they go and source the piece of equipment we need. They provide it for us to use.
No job, big or small, it's not for them. They can do it all. Visit fph.com.au today to find out more. And now let's get back into the episode with Matt Tilley.
You mentioned Will Smith, probably, or was at one stage the biggest movie star of all time. That's one name. Who are a few other names that you've had the privilege and honour to chat with?
Oh, lots. I tell you something about Will Smith. I can't believe I did this now, but I was like, oh, I don't care. What have I got to lose? So I knew he was a bit of fun. So we go to the Crown Hotel where he stays, and they stay in these luxury rooms and all that. And you're just sort of waiting in the foyer and you get called up to do your bit, and he's, got makeup and people around him. And so, and you set up your microphones like you guys are here. And so we kick off the interview and I'm like, well, it's such a privilege and an honour to be interviewing this guy. You know him from movies like Coming to America and Beverly Hills Cop. And I just see him look at me and go, this guy, and then he's like, oh, okay, he's mucking around here. So I do the big, I've confused him for Eddie Murphy thing. And then he does the best Eddie Murphy laugh impersonation.
Really?
Right? And I'm like, oh, no, sorry. He goes, no, I know what you're doing here,
That is
man. and stuff. So
fantastic.
it was really good. But I just
Yeah.
think now, imagine if that went, like I wouldn't
That's
try that now for
ballsy.
sure.
Yeah, that's so ballsy.
Imagine if he goes, mate, I'm sorry, I find that entirely offensive and quite racist, But I just sort of took a risk. And that's what I found with most, to get back to your actual question. Lots of famous people, Harrison Ford, Nicole Kidman, Mel Gibson's, not so many of the young. Oh, you look, Kim Kardashians and all that. They do so much of this. The chance to have a bit of fresh air or something a bit different or a bit whatever, I always think is good for them.
Yes.
So, because otherwise they're just saying the same things over and over again, and that just becomes relentless for them. And like Harrison Ford's a great one because we'd heard that he was prickly, didn't love it. And usually you'd be sitting down in the foyer of Crown or whatever, and you'd be there for an hour and a half. They'd always be running late. And you'd be like, oh, God. And anyway, we're on our way to Harrison Ford. We get this phone call. They're like, where are you? We're like, oh, we're on our way. Why? We're not scheduled for half an hour. They're like, his interviews are finishing in 1 and 2 minutes.
Oh,
He's running early. You need to get here. So I was like, well, we'll get there when we can. Sit down with him, turn it on. And I just say to him, you're completely over this shit, aren't you? And he goes, kinda. I said, well, we don't love it too. It's pretty nervous coming in a taxi hearing that you're grumpy. He goes, oh, you heard that I was grumpy? And it just sort of
yeah.
took off that way. So, and then I think, who was it? Oh, Owen, in the vein of you're all waiting around. Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
We were at the other Hyatt up around Parliament House, and there's always lots of women with clipboards looking very important. Oh, okay, guys, yep, just sit there, won't be a minute. And we're sitting there for about half an hour, and this girl comes down and goes, "Oh, look, we're so sorry. Just the interviews are going really well, so he's running late, but we will get to you guys probably about an hour though." And as she's saying this, we see him in his running gear with a bottle of water and a towel go through the foyer and head out for a jog.
Just tell the
And we're
truth.
like, "Are you stupid?"
Yeah.
But then you can't say anything because if you call it out, you might lose the interview.
Have you in that?
Oh,
'Cause
and who else? Remember Psy, Gangnam Style?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I interviewed him and I didn't know, but so he got done for smoking dope back in the day or whatever. And I had read that he talked about it in interviews and I brought it up and he started pretending he couldn't understand English, like in the whole interview. And he's like, what? And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then someone steps in and goes, "Look, sorry, we're going to have to finish the interview there." And he pulled all his interviews for the whole country.
Oh right.
So I felt terrible for people doing it.
So that was
But
'cause of you.
beautifully, my producer, yeah, because of me, my producer kept the tape running and he just caught him say, "Oh, that guy was a fucking dickhead." And I'm like, "You understand English? Dickhead is like the most Australian word ever." And they're like, "We should play that." I'm like, "Oh, I think we've done a bit of damage with the record company." So we waited 6 months and played it.
Oh, you played it?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
That's so
That's
good.
Well,
quality
he only
content.
had one hit, so
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I love that approach to all of them. If it doesn't quite go the way you hoped, or they're in a bad mood, or they don't see the funny side of it, what does it
Yep.
do if that's happened? What does it do for your confidence for the next one, or just if
yeah, it
that's
can
happened,
happen. Is it the Madden twins?
Yeah,
Oh
brothers.
yeah,
Good,
Benji and,
good child, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, they came in one day and they're like, "Okay, so like we haven't been to bed, so this interview is not going to go very well." And we're like, "Oh, okay, cool, no worries." Anyway, we did this, as you did back in the day on FM radio, this thing where we tried to test their twin powers. So like
Yeah.
we're going to show one of you a photo and we'll see if the other one knows what the photo is of. And I'm embarrassed to tell this now. Anyway, at the time, a big story had broken the day before about Britney Spears getting out of a limousine with no underwear on.
Oh yes, I do happen to recall that story. Yeah.
And so we had a photo of that and showed it to him. And he goes, "Okay, man, no thank you. This interview is over."
Oh.
What did he say to this guy? And then they must have sworn or something. And then Troy, who was our anchor, goes, "Oh, mate, you can't say that on air." He goes, "You're telling us what we can and can't do." And they walked out and it made, the front page of the Herald Sun maybe or something. And same when I used to have fights with Kyle Sandilands. 6 months later, it's a great publicity opportunity and they
Yeah.
want to come back and they've got something to sell. And we're like, "Do you mind if we play that dust up as the promo to sort of say what's going to happen round two?" They're like, "Yeah, no worries, man. Cool." So they get the game too,
Yes.
I guess.
So did you know Kyle pretty well?
Yeah, I knew him when he's just a fat little Black Thunder pilot or whatever. He was based in Sydney or whatever, but he was, always very driven and very determined to get his own show and do his own thing. But yeah, he started right at the bottom,
Yeah.
just doing a night show and playing the hits and saying rude words so teenagers would giggle and stuff. He hasn't come very far.
Well, we heard
far at all.
we had Jace Hawkins in about a month
Oh,
ago.
right. Yeah, I caught up with Jace the other day.
Oh, no
Oh,
way.
really?
Yeah.
yeah. Labby, he was the lab rat on Kyle's
Yeah,
That's
show.
what he told us
Yeah,
all
so
about.
we're just hearing them living together actually, which is quite fascinating. But just going back, I know we've kind of jumped forward, but going back a little bit. So I'm interested into back to your kind of 21, 22-year-old self. What was your life plan at that stage if you had one? I mean, you talk about getting up and doing these speeches at 21st, but was comedy or radio or media part of the plan?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I can say because I'm old now, so it doesn't look like I'm up myself. But when I was at school, if you're reasonably smart at maths, you did medicine. And if you're good at humanities, you did law. And I did okay.
Yep.
So I got into law and I just sort of was just going to stumble along that path because I thought, I'm reasonably confident speaking. Maybe I could be a barrister. And I always thought radio was going to fall over. It was just a bit of a laugh. So it took me 11 years to get my law degree.
Yeah.
I found out the other day I was at law school with Josh Frydenberg.
Oh.
I didn't go very often, so I don't remember him.
You probably had hair back then.
So
Talk about forks in the road. You
so
could've-
was that a life plan? I don't know. I wasn't really very driven.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember when we were doing work experience and I hadn't lined it up and the teacher came and said, "Oh, there's an opening in the bylaws department of the Frankston Council if anyone hasn't lined up work experience." I'm like, "Oh, I want to do law. Yep, I'll do that." But bylaws is parking officers and the dog catcher. And I was like, oh, okay. That's what I thought law was.
In Frankston.
Yeah, so, I didn't really have an ambition. I always sort of figured whatever came my way, I'd have a real hot crack at it and try to be the best at it. I think that evolved, though. That wasn't like, I was just a fat, insecure teenager like, 99% of the other population.
Would love to test your memory, and I haven't worded this up with you, and it's just only come to me. So my old man had an event management company, and you mentioned public speaking and, a bit of hosting, emceeing. Later on down the line, would have been throughout your radio career, you did a gig for my dad, and something happened, not you, it was someone else. And I'd love to get your memory of it and your recollection. It was at the Caulfield Race Course, and Rex Hunt was the guest speaker.
I do remember this. Was it Caulfield or Moonee Valley?
Oh, I think it was Caulfield.
Right.
It might have been Moonee Valley, but Rex went on a bit of a rampage.
He went mental. It's still one of my great memories. So, because my great friend Troy Ellis, his dad was the one who got me to do that because he was involved. It was for plumbers, right?
Yeah, plumbers co-op.
Big plumbers co-op.
Jeez, that's a good memory.
Yeah. So Vaughan Ellis, he's the only person I got 3 different times on a gotcha call, and he knew me.
That's gold.
I still call him the Donald Trump of Red Hill. I will never forget that because I was kind of like emceeing it, I think. Tony Moclair, I think, who used to do Guido Hatzis, was doing a bit of comedy. And Rex. So, you would think Rex Hunt in front of a whole lot of plumbers would just be a lay-down misère for him. I don't know whether he came in hot or angry or whatever, but there'd been a bit of a scandal about him and another lady and him paying her for favours and him saying he was helping out a woman who was struggling to make ends meet. And I don't want to upset Rex Hunt or whatever, but this is all pretty much on the public realm.
Yeah.
But something happened that tipped him, because he was sort of doing a bit of question and answers, and he was saying he had sold more fishing rods in Russia than anyone else. He's fairly confident about his own success, Rex. And some bloke just yells out from the back, "Tell us about the head jobs, Rexy." And got a big laugh from everyone. And he just, his eyes went wild, and he goes, he's like, "Is that what you fucking got me here for?" And he just like went on this like frothing at the mouth thing. He goes, "I came here because I was going to donate my fee to the fucking sick kids down the road at the hospital or whatever. I'm here trying to save lives." And he just went right off on this tangent. I'm like, what sick kids down? What hospital? It wasn't even a fundraiser or anything. And he literally walked out, and I saw his famous Rex Hunt Nissan just out of the racecourse car park. And I'm like, okay, everyone, that was interesting, but I guess we can all say we were here.
I remember you telling me that story. I didn't know
years
Matt
ago.
was,
Matt was emceeing it.
It was extraordinary. You know, what I love is that you validated that, because sometimes I think, did that really happen?
Yeah.
Did I
I'll
mention
never
that?
forget my dad telling me, because he did that event for 10 to 15 years. And he's never seen anything like that happen ever in the 20 to 30 years of doing events.
It was amazing. And then we just got on with the night.
Well, what else can you do? What else can you
It's
do?
like Christmas Day when one of your family members cracks it and walks out, and everyone just goes, "Oh, well, yeah, okay, let's just get on with it, I guess."
That's funny. You mentioned gotcha calls, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners would love to hear about it. We might even have an example a bit later on, but before we get to now we know what could be off limits. But before then, tell us a little bit about the origins of it and how it all came about.
Well, I think everyone grew up doing prank phone calls.
We still do.
Mobiles and stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Probably shouldn't say
So
that.
I used to do them on a mate's dad who ran a bakery. And, we'd all have a laugh about that. And then we must have done, people had done them on radio for years in America and stuff. And I don't know, I think we did one, and then my boss was like, "Oh, come on, you should do more of these." I'm like, "Oh, mate, I think they're a bit lame." Next minute, he builds a whole career on it. Yeah. But I do remember the very, very first one that I sort of thought, okay, well, let's have a think about this. I rang this butcher as an old bloke about what's in his sausages and the different things and stuff. And they kept hanging up on me. And I said to Troy, who was the anchor and recording at the time, I'm like, this is a disaster, mate. There's absolutely nothing we can use here. He goes, "Yeah, no, they just kept hanging up. It didn't really fire, did it?" And then went into production studio, and bloke goes, "I reckon I could put this together." I think it's funny that they keep hanging up, because when they answer again, they're like, "Ugh, what?" And he did a masterful job, this guy. And I was like, "Oh, okay, that works." And then, so I sort of realised then that, there could be different ways to do it. It wasn't about just getting someone to swear or, you know, making them look stupid. There was a lot of that though, obviously. And then it just kind of, I don't know, I was just lucky to be, it was the moment. And email had just started. So we set up an email account where if you knew someone who you thought was pretty ripe for it, had a short fuse or had an embarrassing secret, and I would just get thousands a week of these people with details, with phone numbers and this and that. Massive free kick, right? So suddenly go, God, I've got all this information here. I can really play people off length. And others were like, ring my mum and tell her I've just been hit by a car and will die in 10 minutes. I'm like, yeah, hilarious. Let's do that one. People didn't quite get it.
They're the teenagers.
So I would literally go down to our local cafe with a stack of them like I was a teacher marking essays, just with a black texter going, yes, maybe, could be good. And yeah, it sort of all grew from that.
And the rumour was you used to just do it for your own amusement, not on air or anything, just ringing other radio stations sometimes.
Yeah, I did. I sometimes used to ring 3RW on the way in. That was way back when I was doing a show with Timmy Watson and I were doing Brekkie on Fox. And I knew he'd be driving in at the same time as me. So I would try and get on 3RW. Okay, I guess I've got to admit now, I was obviously on my phone whilst driving. And then, you know, we'd get in and have a bit of a snicker about it. So, yeah, I guess I was doing stuff like that.
Just for purely your own?
Yeah, just for my own. Most of my career is about amusing myself. And then if others are happy with it, that's great too.
It's funny, though. To this day, there are some of the best pranks. Yours are absolutely amazing. But there's a couple even on the sport. Like, people are still pranking these SENs and sports channels, pretending to be different people to try and roll people up. And it is our favourite thing to listen to.
Do you know what I feel sorry for, though, Matt? Because, and I was saying this to Dos the other day, they've become so popular over the last few years that I know, I'm not making light of this by any stretch, but I know a guy that's a bit older and when he talks, he doesn't sound like he's quite all there, right?
Right.
And he rings up, I probably shouldn't laugh at this, but
he
rang up SEN the other day to give his opinion about Richmond, and he's going on and on and on, and the host, I knew who the guy was. He was being dead serious, but the guy thought he was a kid playing a prank and hung up on him. It's enough of this is bullshit, blah, 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 we're blocking your number, blah, blah. Like, that's the extent that it's kind of gotten to. But, Connor, do you want to dive into it?
I think this would be a good chance, good opportunity. And then let's see.
Do you ever go back and listen to your own work?
Absolutely not.
No.
In fact, my daughter, a couple of years ago, at her work for Chris Kringle, got assigned one of my CDs. And she said, it was a $10 limit, Dad.
Well, Connor's going to play something for us and we'll be able to introduce
Get Matt's reaction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's have a listen.
Yes.
Oh, Enzo, it's Sebastian calling from Lady Bits in. How are you this morning?
Yep.
The reason for my call is that your wife has asked me to call you. We have her here. She came down to our salon about 20 minutes ago for a Brazilian treatment, and there's been a bit of an accident.
What do you mean, bit of an accident?
Well, we've used a fair bit of wax, and unfortunately, we've sealed it.
You sealed what?
The old, you know where a woman has the Brazilian waxing done, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, unfortunately, we used a bit too much wax, and it's now sealed. And she just asked me to call you.
Is she there?
Yeah, do you want to talk to her? Do you want me to pass the phone on?
Yeah.
I won't be a second, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
What's wrong?
No, I wanted to surprise you this weekend.
Huh?
They've waxed me up.
So she's in on the prank.
What do you mean
yeah.
they waxed you up?
This was her idea.
Surprise you.
I don't understand what's wrong.
You put too much wax on me and then I'm stuck together.
And now what do I have to do? Pick you up?
No, it's just that I can't walk properly now.
Oh my God. Are you going to be alright to drive?
Enzo, sorry, it's me again, Sebastian. Look, she'll be fine to drive. It just means any sort of I guess any sort of action that you guys might want would be off the cards for, I don't know, a month, 6 weeks.
Oh my bloody God. Yeah, alright, so what do I do?
Well, I guess you just got to be patient.
Okay. Well, just put it back on again, sorry.
Okay, I'll pop it back on for you, no worries.
Hello?
Well, what's going to happen now?
Well, nothing. It's just we can't be intimate now. I'm stuck a little bit, so...
I told you I don't want a dumb down there. Do you know?
Yeah, but I want to, do something special and, something different.
You sing
Oh.
Oh, that's funny.
Thanks, Connor.
Oh, that's funny. Do you recall individual ones like that? Do you recall?
No,
that
I didn't recall that you played that, and I am a little bit. Oh, okay, that was probably a bit. She was in on it, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's her idea, you said.
I might have led her down one way or the other.
Yeah.
Realizing she was up for anything. I don't actually remember on this occasion. I do feel a bit uncomfortable there. I've got to be honest.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, that was funny at the time, and she was in on it. But I'm like, okay, that was. I forgot how close to the wind I used to go. But
Again,
of course,
we don't have to. We can
cut all that.
Cut all that out too.
no, absolutely no. I like, as I say, I'm not home. But the thing I say about that is, none of those ever went to air without all parties going, okay, no worries.
signing.
Like we had to. Jesus Christ, imagine
Oh, yeah.
the liability if we put stuff to air against people's wishes and stuff, because we're secretly recording them.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. So are you in an instance like that? Are you right? Is it very scripted and
No.
Okay. So
no, I never scripted anything.
okay.
And
So even
if
for
someone,
the other person that's in on it.
no, she would I just like, here's what we're going to do. You just go with it. Like, how funny is she?
Well, she's great, and in fact,
Yeah,
that
she
she's
was
not
very good.
cracking up laughing is
Yeah, she's
unbelievable.
hilarious. So I probably was, she would have told a bit of a backstory that my husband's complaining we're spending too much money on me going down to Brazilian butterfly or whatever, So it's a bit of, he'll crack it. So I'm like, great, okay, what can we do here that's really going to flip him out?
So
And
funny.
today's day and age, it's obviously now you've got the iPhones and the caller ID. It's much harder to get away with those.
Killed it. So two things. There was that awful incident where a woman took her life in England after someone who was on Fox but not me rang pretending to be Prince Charles and got put through to Kate Middleton or something. And the woman on reception, not even the nurse who took the call, took her life. And in her suicide note, I think, said, it's because of this and what happened to me here. It was
Holy shit.
and so the guy who did that, it was an awful moment for him.
Yeah.
They just got through as Prince Charles and wanted to say hi or something. So that really sort of cast a pall over, okay, that's not great. And caller ID. No caller ID. Because I used to have burner phones and all kinds of things. Because some of them, I'd spend weeks setting up fake voicemails when I was trying to convince someone to buy a dodgy car or something like that. I had a lot of things going on. But after a while, no caller ID, people were just like, nah, not answering that. If that's that idiot again, not answering.
I
And you go,
don't answer a lot of calls because I don't know the number. I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah, you wait for someone
So
to leave a
we
message.
had this whole file of half done gotcha calls where you go, well, maybe I'll call back in a few weeks and they'll have cooled down and forgotten about it and we'll get through again. But of course, call back in a few weeks and they have cooled down. They're not pissed off anymore, and so you couldn't edit it together and go, okay, he's going off here. Let's have one more go.
Yeah.
So
Do you mind if I just jump in there
Yeah.
quickly? Do you feel, obviously, like you said, probably teetering with the line there at times?
yes,
Do you feel like sometimes as a society, though, today in 2025, we're somewhat a little bit oversensitive?
yeah, I think we're always oversensitive. Just depends who you are.
Yeah.
So someone who I reckon does it brilliantly is someone like Ricky Gervais.
Yeah.
Who is actually really caring and sensitive and very equal, but plays that line of well, you're discriminating against people if you're removing them from being able to have a laugh and fun about themselves. You sort of put them in a special category, which in a way is kind of like a reverse ostracization. It is separating them, and that's what we're trying to evolve away from, isn't it? Whilst being very wrong and very funny. It comes back to, you can make the choice to just not listen.
Yeah.
And, short of if it's teachers indoctrinating kids or something like that, of course not. But it's just entertainment.
Yeah.
That for me, I'm like, this is just a bit of harmless fun to give you a smile on the way to work or whatever. I don't want anyone to think that I am the way, the truth, and the light.
No, yeah.
Ricky has a great quote. It's almost like, there's a sign on a telephone pole at the front of your house, and it's a guy trying to sell you guitar lessons, and it's a random going up to it, grabbing the number, and going, I don't want fucking guitar lessons. Like you're not calling the number, telling him what guitar. It's your choice. You get to choose. He's not coming to you saying, listen to my jokes. You're choosing to go and watch.
It's a good point. But then I also go, it's also a great convenient defense for people who just want to say the wrong thing and get paid.
That's true too. Yeah.
So I'm kind of...
Ricky lines up everybody though.
That's
so
it.
it's
I guess
like-
when and I'm certainly not comparing myself to him. I think he's just brilliant. But I guess the point is, of course you're going to say that when that's what you do. Whereas I go, okay, well, I'm happy to hear what other people say as well.
So, reflecting on that, for example, when you listen back or somebody comes up to you in the street or wherever and talks about gotcha calls, how does that make make you feel? Is it like, oh fuck, not again? We've got to talk about this, or do you look back fondly and very proud of that part of your career?
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because when you've had mild celebrity like me, actually, I'm going to tell you a very funny story that happened when my kids were at school, right? So that was a funny sort of space, and it was the school Aths Carnival, and I was sort of trying to find my son, and I said to a girl who was in his class, who was quite sassy, I said, "Oh, hi, do you know where Jack is?" She goes, "Oh, he's just over there, sitting over there with all the thing." I said, "Oh, am I allowed to go there?" She goes, "You're a B-grade celebrity. You can go wherever you like." And I was like, "Oh, ouch."
How old would have she been?
Year 9.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
whack. And I was like, "Oh, that's funny." But apart from that incident, which clearly still sits with me, I've probably got to
Yeah, obviously.
sit on Oprah's couch and work through it. It's generally nice.
Yeah.
Not many people, I guess people couldn't be bothered if they didn't like it, come up to it. But generally, there's a moment of reminiscing, a bit like we're doing now.
Yeah.
This is a longer version than most interludes on the train or whatever. But they're like, "Oh, I loved that," or "This was really, amazing for me," or, it just reminds me of a time in my life and we just used to, sit in the car and have fun as a family. So that's really, really nice. In fact, I never thought about that at the time. I would have loved myself sick if I knew it was having that sort of effect. But like even just recently, we employed someone at FightMND. She's fantastic, this woman, Soumya. And when she first came out from India, her and her husband now with kids, both worked in a call centre, right? And they would drive from Hoppers Crossing listening to the gotcha calls. And sometimes if they went after 8 o'clock, they would just sit in their car until they finished, right? And often it was Arjib, the Indian character. And when they went into the call centre, they'd be docked the minutes that they were late after 8 o'clock from their annual leave. But they didn't care. And I'm like, she's telling me this. And I'm like, what? So you were using up your annual leave just to listen to the end of my gotcha calls? I feel sick about that. She's like, no, we loved it. We didn't care. She goes, we worked in a call centre and we'd come out from India. Where were we going to go on holidays anyway? And I was like, wow, that is kind of, I never thought of the consequences and the far-reaching stories. And I love stories, telling them and hearing them. So that's a nice thing when people come up and go, yes, I remember this, that gotcha call, that thing. But when they go, and it was because this was happening in my life, or this is what I remember.
That's very nostalgic.
That's what I was literally just about to say. It's that period of time, like for us, we were kids, but you look back at all this stuff and even just doing more research on you and looking online and just things that were happening in the world and what was going on and the way everything, like media was, for example, it is nostalgic. It's like a great little timepiece.
Yeah. So if there's what's the word here that doesn't sound wanky? Legacy. Thank you. Saved me saying it. It is that people look back fondly, which it's my favourite thing to do. We had this thing on that show with Joe and Adam and Troy and Paul Dowsley, our producer and stuff. And it's such a beautiful phrase. I don't know who came up with it. So seeing I'm on the podcast, I'll say me. We call it ghost laughs, which is when you sit around and you go, remember when that happened or this went wrong and, oh, how funny was that? And that's just that feeling you get. So if those calls provide a bit of that, that's unreal. That's all I want to do.
You and Joe seemed like you had such a strong chemistry. Do you guys still share a friendship today?
It's funny, isn't it? Yes. It sounds like I'm trying to find a reason to say it.
It's like, oh.
We've never spoken. For sure. But one of the things that worked for us, I reckon, and I've never worked with someone more amazing, more dedicated and talented and stuff. It was extraordinary. It was like 10 years. That doesn't happen very often.
And Troy was great. He was perfect.
Yeah. So Troy, I was at school with Troy. He was a bit younger than me and mates with my brothers. So he's like a lifelong friend. But Joe, we still have a really strong texting relationship, I think. And, I'm really grateful for that. It was a pretty magical and intense 10 years. So, but we didn't socialise. None of us did really. And I think that's what made us come to work and be interested and, find joy in what we were hearing, because it wasn't like we were all there on Saturday night. So you had to listen in and go, or wherever it was. So I've run out of things to say about that. That doesn't mean I hate Joe. I loved working with her.
I think you might have the wrong Joe. I think that's Joe Hildebrand on Triple M.
Yeah.
But that was another part too. What do you, in terms of breakfast versus drive home, did you ever have a preference and why?
Well, I thought I would always love drive. It was written into my contract for many years that, at a mutual time of agreement, I would move to drive. And I was like, how cool would that be? Just have the day to yourself, come in and talk bullshit. And then when when the opportunity arose, I was like, oh, this is horrendous. All day I'm thinking, I've got to go to work. I've got to go to work. And all the best news stories have been covered and all the funny jokes have been thought of and written and said about what was the big news story of the day. So I didn't really love it.
Okay.
It kind of hung over your head all day. One of the things I loved about breakfast was like you got up early, you went hard, you finished the show, you planned a bit of stuff, and then you're like, oh, that's work done for the day.
Yeah.
You know,
Interesting.
that's time to have a mental beer.
Yeah.
and I'm sure at the end of the day, there's more pressure because, you know, you've had all day to have to think of ideas, and if the ideas aren't what you want them to be,
Like
people can go, mate, you've had that all day. You know,
I used to feel that
Yeah.
for sure. I hoped that no one else felt that way, so it's made me feel a bit sick that you've observed that. And it's just I don't know. It's a different vibe driving home to driving to work. I don't know why. You'd think people would be more relaxed going home because their day's done, thank goodness. But I don't know. Brekkie, it's up. It's about that. And also, there's kids in the car on the way to school and work, whereas drive, it's usually a bit late and school's done. And I don't know, that was a big strength of ours apparently, was kids in the car, the pester power.
That was us.
The nag.
Yeah.
I'll never forget driving to school, listening to you guys.
Yeah, so we tried to fleece that for all the money that we could.
As you should.
Worked in our house.
But that was also, you get back to, what's the line, what do you cross? Oh, too bad if you don't like it, tune out. We were always respectful of kids in cars because we didn't want to lose them.
Yeah, of course. Well,
Didn't want to lose them.
Yeah.
And so we would get a lot of that. And that was the one point where we go, yeah, okay. I guess we need to rein that in.
How do you respond? Well, you probably just answered that question. I was going to ask, how do you respond to potential people writing in, mums that are not happy or someone that's not happy because they think something's inappropriate?
Well, we knew the kids would love it.
Yeah.
If it was naughty and it was wrong. So, I was projecting to moments like this where in decades down the road, I'd be sitting in podcasts with these little kids who I've been getting inside their heads.
That are now grown
having
up
these
and
great
interview-
reverential discussions about how good it was. No, we would. Well, generally, my golden rule of thumb, and, there wasn't just mums who complained. I got lots of complaints. Talk to them. Be honest. Ring them. And so I would just ring people and say, hey,
Oh, wow.
got your email. That's a fair point. I cop that. My apologies. We're often on the fly. It was thoughtless. And I reckon almost every time people are like, oh my God, I feel terrible. I didn't want you to ring back. I'm sorry for annoying you. I'm like, no, not at all. And maybe they're a bit intimidated, that someone had bothered to respond. But I'm like, no, it's a fair call. And I just want you to know that you were heard.
That's unbelievable. I've heard people respond on social media in a probably more of a current environment.
It's
But
very different now because it's such high volume.
Yeah.
There's so many DMs and all that sort of stuff. But back then, I was more than happy to do that. It's, it sounds wanky, but it's customer service.
Yeah.
Like that kind of worked. And then, you look at Hamish and Andy, they then took it to the next level with that sort of stuff. I think that whole sense of really caring about your audience and being invested rather than, they don't understand. I'm actually
love
pretty
hearing
good.
that.
Same. Obviously, such a huge career in radio, Matt, but then you also had, quite a few shows, hosting shows and being part of some, pretty good programs on TV as well. And one of them...
Well, I might have to correct you there. I think I'm probably the only person in Australia to have a failed show pulled before its season was due to end on every network.
Really?
Maybe. I don't know. I say that because I think that's a good boast, but it mightn't be entirely true.
Yeah, okay. Well, if that's the case, I'll
look, I
change
think
the tone of my question, which is, why is it, obviously TV is it more difficult than, people think?
It's a really good question. One, I didn't like auto cue. I found that weird and I wouldn't be myself when I was reading stuff. Two, it's also practiced and constrained and rehearsed, and I never like saying the same thing the same way twice. So if I'd done it the best way first, I'm like, oh, I'm going to muck this up now or whatever. Actually, let me premise all this with maybe I just was no good at TV and was better at radio. TV at the time had this obsession with radio talent going, oh my God, these people have like 1 million people listening a week. Let's get them on. It's guaranteed revenue, this and that. But they're definitely different skill sets and different sizes. And I had a guy, I'm trying to remember what his name. He's married to Kim out of Kath and Kim, Rick McKenna. And he just told me something once and it sat with me. I'm like, oh God, he goes, TV is not radio. Some of the little smarty comments you make and stuff, right, you can get away with because someone's in the car and there's different things going on. But when they're sitting looking at you and you say something, it carries a bit of an edge. And I was like, oh, that's a good point. Here I am thinking I'm a bit of a smartass, but they're just thinking this guy's cocky and rude. So maybe that was it. Maybe the shows were bad ideas. And also, often it wasn't your idea at all.
Yeah,
They're
of
like,
course.
would you just come and host this? And I'm like, yep. And then 4 meetings later, you're like, this is nothing like what they said it was going to be. I'm a bit uncomfortable doing this. That's clearly going to show on camera because I'm not. You got to love what you do. Okay, so I've given you 5 excuses as to why they all failed. I'm out now.
Yeah.
But some went okay, I guess. I don't know. I mean, as a writer, getting to work on Fast Forward, I think that's one of the, you know, that and Comedy Company and some other shows were like really some of the greatest shows ever constructed for their time.
I was gonna like, in terms of getting axed or a show getting cut short. What does that do? What does that do to you as a person? How do you feel?
That's a good point. I guess, and I reckon I was a bit deluded. I thought radio was more important. It was definitely where I was, you know, most comfortable and most secure and probably had the best part of my career. So TV was a nice to have. But I think back now and go, well, yeah, but TV, you're way more exposed and people were like looking at you and judging you. And radio, every time you do something, about 5 minutes later, you get a chance to fix it up or make good. Or if you said something lame, you can try and be funny next time or be interesting the next time. TV, you don't get that chance. And you're very exposed. So, yeah, I guess. I just remember twice I got invited to the Logies. And so the invites were sent out because we were on a show, a new show. But the show had been axed before the Logies happened. So you go,
Still
well,
get to
we've still
go
got
for
a
free.
seat.
Yeah.
But you'd be right up the back. And I remember I was sitting at this table once with some John Safran and a few people like that. We'd been on this sort of roguish sketch comedy show. I remember seeing Richard Wilkins like looking at his card, where am I sitting, where am I sitting? And then he sees his table number and he's like, oh, fuck.
Dickie,
I'm
Dickie
right
not
up the
happy.
back with these losers. I don't even know who they are.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, yeah, mate, I'm sorry. We've just ruined your night.
they're supposed to be the best nights. I heard back. Well, back
Well,
then,
I
the
loved it
Logies-
because I
the
could like
Logies-
observe it all and
Yeah.
like, you know, it was just funny to see all those people you saw on TV in the wild.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
With the pranking, obviously the prank calls, you know, did so well on radio. How did the transition or the move from, you know, because you obviously did Surprise, Surprise, Gotcha, that show, and
Yeah.
that's a totally different type of prank.
Well, that was, yeah, and that's a good example of what I thought was going to be something that it wasn't. So originally it was going to be, you know, coming up with pranks, and then I would be sort of put into them as characters and with makeup and this and that. And then when I got there, I found out all the pranks had been written and bought off this French production company, and you would sort of pay for mildly funny pranks, really funny pranks, like hilarious pranks. And
really?
there was price points.
Cheers.
And I think Nine had bought the sort of cheaper ones and bought 2 really expensive ones, thinking that would sort of, you know, make a good feast. And so I met this guy, actually he was Belgian, who he just would go around the world selling all these. And depending on if you bought the good ones, they'd be the #1 show in the country and things like that.
So you would, just to preface or to let everyone know, you would prank celebrities, wouldn't you? Like
They
famous-
tried to, but we couldn't get many celebrities and they weren't really well done. And Channel 9 was in turmoil. That's when Eddie Maguire was the CEO of Channel 9 and there was production costs being pulled here, there and everywhere and stuff. And so the person who commissioned it got sacked. And then so someone was like, well, I'm left holding this baby, you know, the bathwater's been thrown out. I don't really care about it. There was all that. And I'm like, oh, I hate this. I'm just at the whimsy of other people, but I'm going to be the one they go, that was lame.
That's a
Don't like that.
frustration.
Yeah, I remember you and Jackie O's face. Like, that's, you know.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and Jackie's another classic one. I mean, yeah, she's been on lots of shows, and lots of them haven't gone well, and she's kind of had to wear it. And it's like, TV's really different.
Think
Whereas,
she's
you know,
doing all right.
Kyle and Jackie, she's got to wear 50% of that. Actually, 80%. She does all the work. He does nothing.
In that case, how if you guys start production and you feel okay, now it's like in some cases it's your brand really, like you're the face of it, even though you may not have much creative control. Is there a time when you can actually basically have a conversation and say, hey, can I step in here to make some mild adjustments, or is it?
I didn't feel like that. I felt like I should just shut up and do as I was told. And I also, with that particular show, I was like, I actually don't want to do this. This is actually really bad, and this could muck up my brand, for want of a better
Wow.
word,
Yeah.
on radio. But I was like, I guess I was intimidated by TV, and I thought, well, if I do that, I'll never get a chance again. They'll be like, who does this guy think he is? Blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
You know, TV is definitely the big brother of radio, I think, in terms of where you think you sit. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But yeah, I wasn't as confident in myself and my capabilities in the TV world.
Yeah.
Nowhere near it.
Do you want to go to post
Yeah.
media career? I just want to make sure you don't have any more questions
No,
within it, because I'd be keen to know, after such a successful career within the radio space, like why make the decision to leave? Like, radio and media is such a, I don't want to say I don't know, but it seems like from the outset it's a great place to be in radio itself. Probably getting paid pretty well. Looking after your family, everything's good, but you make the call to I guess finish up. I know you had breaks in between and going to different stations, but to then completely change industries, can you explain the transition into then where you got to now?
Maybe. Because I'm not sure I know myself, to be honest.
Okay.
I do know that for a long time when I was young and things were going well and I thought, oh, well, if this tip's over, I'll just be a lawyer or whatever. I'm like, I don't ever want to be that guy doing the Sunday morning show and then having to go to shopping centres to make ends meet and just really trying to wring out the tea towel of, hey, remember me? You might know me from such things as gotcha calls. And because I'd seen a few people like that and thought, that's a bit trage. And I don't mean being arrogant. I just thought, oh, I'd hate that. That must feel, having people walk past you and go, do I know you? Were you the... So I had a sense of that. But then, of course, you don't always get a say. I used to say to people all the time, someone tried to start a union in radio. And I'm like, that's crazy. There's no right to a job in entertainment. You're at the whimsy of public popularity, all that sort of stuff. And so be it. You go in with your eyes open. There is no, I've worked for 20 years. I'm more qualified than anyone else. I demand my own show. So I guess I kind of, that was also the sense that I won't decide when my career's up. Maybe the audience will, or maybe management will go, we're going in a different direction, and I'll have to be fine with that. I wasn't as fine with it as I thought I would be, because I enjoyed it, and also I think I was comfortable. And it was like, well, this is pretty cushy and pretty good. And but during the gotcha calls, as I said to you, I'd been exposed to a lot of charities and stuff, and I actually sort of also thought, maybe I should use my brain for something too. Not saying I've got a great brain, but I'm like, you sort of used your wits and your whatever and gift of the gab. Maybe I should try something that really challenges me. And I guess, so that was sort of in and around, charities, because I was on a few boards, and one guy who's a bit of a mentor of mine, this guy, Dennis Moriarty, who heads up the Institute of Community Directors and stuff, he said, let me put you through our diploma just on governance and stuff. It's a pretty expensive course, but I reckon you're going to go into this space. I'm like, oh, don't be so stupid. Why would I be doing that? And he's a fantastic guy, and we were on a board of a family violence charity together, and I kind of did that and went, oh, okay. And then I was like, well, starting from scratch. He goes, you're not starting from scratch. The number one thing charities need is a way to engage broad audiences beyond their, the people they help or the victims they assist, to get the public to be interested and concerned enough to, lean in, support, give money. I was like, oh, okay. So I kind of just need to work out the prank phone call version of fundraising, like rather than CDs and stuff. How do you tell stories and get people moved and, I don't know, emotional about stuff that's actually going to move the needle a bit? So actually, I'm putting myself to sleep with this answer, I've got to say, but because I'm trying to find a reason for something that just happened. But I clearly wanted it to happen, and then, I'd got to know lots and lots of people. So, and then I'd always had this idea that if you could do one day where everyone gave just $1, that's $25 million in Australia, right? And I'd told lots of people about it. And like, well, how would you do it? I'm like, well, election day is the day where everyone has to stump up and do something. Yeah. So if you just get bucketed at every polling booth and ask everyone to chuck $1 in, imagine that. And so I was taking a bit of a gap year from radio, and a friend of mine, she goes, and she's a bit of a life coach sort of person. I'm very cynical of those people. Most of them have got shit lives, so I'm like, I don't need you coaching me. She's an amazing woman. And she goes, I reckon you should have a crack at this thing. I'm like, oh, no, I wouldn't know how. She goes, just go and buy a MacBook tomorrow and just start Googling things, people.
What's this Google machine?
And before I knew it, enough people thought that's a good idea, and I had the NAB on board, and they were giving me an office and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, I sort of thought, oh, maybe the magic wand is charity, and people are too scared to say no because you're doing good. And maybe that is a bit true. So I did it. And next minute, I've got the Andrews government agreeing to match me dollar for dollar. And then I just rang the opposition health spokesperson, Georgie Crozier, and said, would you match this? She's like, oh, I'll call you back. I was like, how does this happen? I thought you would have to spend months, meetings. And I found out now you actually do. A lot of the time I do spend my life waiting for ministers to get back to an email. But it just was luck. We did it at the second last Dan Andrews election. We'd only been trying for 6 weeks. And it kind of resonated. And I was like, oh, I actually really got a buzz out of that. And then people stopped voting on election day and no one carried cash.
Yeah.
So it died in the ass before it could be.
That's annoying. When you said the idea, I'm like, that's genius.
Yeah.
So I still think there's a way, and I think it's coming back because there's now apps that we use to sell beanies at FightMND where you can just tap people's phones. So whether they do that for $1 or not. But it kind of got me going and I kind of got a bit of a rush out of it. And as fate would have it, at the same time I was talking to Gavin Andrews, who was the Special Minister of State and Liberal Party, and a guy, I'd been the ambassador for the Food Bank Hunger Ride. Yeah. Because I like cycling. And I'd become really good mates with the CEO, a guy called Dave McNamara, and he rang me after that all fell through. He said, hey, how did that work out? I'm like, oh, okay, but it's just not going to be a thing because no one goes to the polling booth anymore. It's too hard to get cash off people. He goes, oh, well, what are you doing now? I'm like, oh, that's a good question. He goes, this COVID thing, it was the week before COVID kicked off. He goes, I reckon it's going to be pretty big. And with Food Bank, we had the bushfires. I feel like the public really want to help us. We didn't really know what we're doing. Would you just want to come in and can you look after marketing and stuff and just put a bit of backbone behind what we do? Because we don't really have enough people to do that. And I was like, yeah, sure. I don't reckon this COVID thing's going to last, but I'm happy to give it a couple of months. And then I was there for 4 years and ended up heading up the fundraising there, building a great big team, and we did things that were in my wheelhouse. We invented this thing called the food fight in schools, which is where kids get to piff like sponges, like rotten tomatoes at their teachers. And I'm like, well, this just feels like pranking again.
That's thinking differently. Like, no one would have thought something like that as an event would even be feasible 10 years ago.
Maybe. I don't know. But I just realised I quite like doing that and seeing it come off. It takes a lot longer than, doing a new show every day.
For sure. And now with FightMND, you've been there a year now? Coming up to
just
a year?
about a year.
Yeah, so how was the transition to that? And I mean, it's become so big over the last, what are we up to, 11 years now?
Yes, Big Freeze 11. Well, the thing is, to be honest, when I got there, most of the heavy lifting had been done, right? This extraordinary thing started by the Danaher family around their kitchen table, now with just unrivaled partners like Coles and Bunnings and the AFL and stuff. So a little bit of me was like, well, what am I going to do? All I can do there is go there and stuff it up. Like,
drive it into the ground.
It's pretty amazing. But I guess for me, and this is again that whole background of marketing, community engagement and stuff, every day I had to think of something new to keep people interested. It's no secret, not just FightMND, all charities, you think of things that have come and gone. Novelty wears off. People aren't going to have 27 beanies. That's probably not going to be a thing. Yeah. So I liked the thing about going, all right, we're never going to walk away from what is so important to it and what we believe. But how do we keep it interesting? How do we change it up? How do we tweak it a bit and make it more fun or take it next level? So, that was the challenge that got me there. And free tickets to the footy.
That's always nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. Well, this episode will be released on Big Freeze Day, on King's birthday, which couldn't get better timing. Which everyone listening.
It's iconic. Yeah. I went to that lunch last year as the sort of CEO in waiting because I'd had some holidays booked and just when the job all landed, and I just remember looking out across the G and seeing like 80,000 beanies, going, "This doesn't happen anywhere else in the world."
It's insane.
It's incredible what. Like you mentioned, the Danaher family, what they've built and to do it for 11 years, but to see it grow, and even you mentioned before we came on air, the transition and the name changing and it becoming this huge blue army. Where are we at with FightMND and finding a cure?
It's a really good question. I reckon I get asked about 10 times a day and I'm still not sure I've got the right answer. But, to just give it a bit of context, like, we're now an epicenter for the world here in Melbourne. So last year we flew out all these professors from Oxford and Johns Hopkins University in America and stuff for a round table because we're like, okay, we're not just an ATM for this anymore. We've actually got a bit of leadership here. And so we're like, rather than everyone doing all this research in different labs around the world and around Australia, all not necessarily talking together, going to the odd conference, let's get everyone in a room, no laptops, no science, no charts, no PowerPoints, just butcher's paper. How are we going to do this, everyone? Like, you're all chasing money every 2 years looking for more grants, and that's great. But no, how are we actually going to find a cure? And it was amazing. They loved it. They absolutely, they're awkward for a couple of hours. Like, can I just show you what we've been doing? And it broke down to, what do we need to share? We need to share data. What's the problem? Big pharmaceutical companies need to be a bit more compliant, or a bit more elastic around, helping out to find a cure as opposed to helping out to find a drug that's going to give a cure but make lots of money. And, it wasn't all that. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is what's going to get us on the path to a cure, as much as the labs and the mice and the experiments that we also fund. But when they were here, and I was chatting to this fantastic professor from Oxford, Kevin Talbot. God, he had a beautiful voice and he loved cricket. I took him on a tour of the G. And he just couldn't believe, he goes, I've been researching this all my life, but I still go out to dinner parties and things, and people say, what do you do? I'm a professor, I research this, MND. And they're like, oh, MND, what's that? He says, oh, it's motor neuron disease. He goes, I come here, everyone, the garbo, the waitress, they know what MND is. They know who Neil Danaher is. He goes, that's just, there's nowhere else in the world where that exists. So that's an amazing thing that we're at the forefront.
Yeah.
But in terms of cure, it takes a long time. We don't even have a test for diagnosis. So the average life expectancy is 27 months. But if you've spent 6 months trying to find out, have I got MND? Is it something else? You've lost that 6 months just wondering before you go, okay, I don't have much time left. And Neil's an absolute outlier. 11 years is an extraordinary time for someone to live with MND. Some people live a little bit longer, but a lot live six to 10 months. So we are getting closer in terms of giving people hope. Before FightMND came along, there's lots of great organisations around the states, MND associations, who were supporting people with equipment and care, but there were no drug trials here. We were the arse end of the earth, the big pharma companies. Now, I think we've had 34 clinical drug trials run here in the last 10 years.
Wow.
And big pharma comes to us and goes, oh, hi, you guys. You seem to have a bit of money and a bit of know-how. So it's great. And that's what needs to keep happening.
Now, what you guys are doing is so brilliant, because I fall into that same basket. I mean, 11 years ago, I didn't know what MND was.
No.
I think probably most of us in here wouldn't have known what it was. So what you guys are doing is unbelievable. So I want to commend you on that. You talked about legacy in radio and what you've done in the past. Well, who knows what your legacy will be from here on in, is just being a part of what could be a truly global life.
Yeah, I think the word legacy there is for someone like Neil Danaher.
Yes.
And the other
But as a team.
co-founders. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a fabulous team. So we're 40 people now. And a lot of people go, what? 40 people to pack all those beanies? But so the money we dish out has to have a really, really thorough and rigorous process around, distributing grants, who qualifies. People from around the world are looking for the millions, $115 million we've distributed. So we have to be as good, or if not better, than government practice in terms of how funding's handed out, and, having constantly evaluate these with leading experts from around the world and all that sort of stuff. So our programs team, 6-7 people, all with PhDs and researchers from the space and stuff. So it's quite an organisation, and as a team, there's lots of people helping out. It's not just those selling beanies.
What was it like at the office when Neil was announced as Australian of the Year?
Well, I wasn't at the office. I was at home with my family. And so it's kept ironclad as a secret. And so I got a heads up about an hour beforehand. So I rang our chair, because I thought he should know, but we both swore to secrecy, wouldn't tell our families or anyone. Certainly didn't want Neil or his family finding out. Surprise. But my family, we were sitting around like it was the Olympic Games venue being announced, like we'd had dinner, we're sitting around the couch. And I don't know how bad my acting skills were, because they're like, oh, how's he going to? I'm like, oh, I don't know, guys, how good will it be and stuff. And literally everyone leapt off the couch when it was announced. It was incredible. It was absolutely amazing. And I was, we had things in place, obviously, in case it should happen, and people up there to help and stuff. But when Neil came through the doors back at the airport when I went to meet them the next day, I mean, you were just also reminded that was amazing, but it's just hard. Someone has to hold the doors open, they have to get his eye gaze technology. Even when you're Australian of the Year, you can't escape this insidious disease. But amazing. And I think I didn't get to it, but that night Neil went to the Australian Open and got a standing ovation. And I think that was quite amazing. So pretty special.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to seeing that statue being built at the MCG one day of Neil.
There's a lot of demons there, isn't there?
Yeah, why not add one more? Who do you go for?
I'm Bombers.
Oh, you're Bombers.
I tell you, I met Neil as part of the interview process for this job, and I said to him, so job interviews are already an awkward space, and then it's intimidating because it's Neil, and also because he has eye gaze technology, so you got to wait a while for his answers. And I grew up a Bombers fan, and I said, look, probably I should get this out of the way early on, but you were my third favourite Danaher growing up. And his eyes go a bit wide, and I said, well, Terry was my favourite because he was the captain, and then Chris, his number got put on my back because it was 7, and that was easier for Mum to sew, and then it was you.
That's so cool.
So, yeah, and he still has a very fond place in his heart for the Bombers, I think, but it's the demons, that you equate it with.
No, for sure. Well, it's a good point. Now, we have to switch gears a little bit now.
Before we do, we do need to talk about the beanies.
You talk about that.
I've already got my 2. Matt's brought in a couple as well, but everyone, if you're listening today or in the future, whenever it is, because you don't just have to buy the beanies to donate. But, Matt, where do they go to buy the beanies?
Coles and Bunnings.
Yeah.
Of course. Going to the footy. And because this is now being broadcast in the future...
Yeah,
I'm very excited to share with you guys that we also have going live right now a digital beanie.
Okay.
So basically you go to bigfreeze.com.au on your phone or whatever. It's $25. The difference with this donation is it's tax deductible. And then you get your little digital beanie. You can personalise it. Put your name or your nickname across the front of it. No swear words. We've blocked out 368 of the rudest words we could think of.
I think we could find one if we try.
Don't worry, I've been trying for 2 weeks.
I was going to say,
if you can't, we got no chance.
And so what we're trying to do across this whole weekend is fill the G with digital beanies. So if we can sell 100,000 of them, fill the G.
Wow. That'll
be an amazing campaign because we love to have this big Freeze weekend as a fundraiser, as well as the beanies over the last few weeks. So Coles, Bunnings, of course, get to the footy yourself and get them there. A lot of clubs are selling them at their kiosks and things like that. But if you've got too many or you've got a hot head or whatever, the digital beanie is really the big thing for us. And it's a bit of fun. You can share it on your socials. You get a little tile with your name and the beanie and all that.
How good's that?
So bigfreeze.com.au. I'll say it again 3 more times before this podcast is
Say
finished.
one more right now. bigfreeze.com.au.
Yep.
Get your beanie, guys.
Now we've got to switch gears a little bit.
Yes.
I'll put that over there, Dos, as we come towards the end of this podcast. We've got now the confession booth, Matt, which
the Rexel confession.
The Rexel.
I'm not Catholic, but I'm no stranger to these.
He was brought up Catholic and went
Me?
there, and you went there a few times.
So
didn't you?
this segment is brought to you by our good
Yes.
friends at Rexel, Matt. So Rexel are the number 1 electrical wholesaler in Australia. How many stores do they have across
127.
Australia? 127.
Over 100 years.
It's just a few, isn't it?
Yeah, just a few. And you like their app as well?
I do. So it's obviously the app has been around for a while, but they've recently rewired and recharged it to bring you a better, seamless, faster experience.
So all you Sparkies out there, now you can enjoy a streamlined homepage, explore products with offline catalogs, scan items directly into your basket using their barcode scanner and DOS. Discover a range of innovative time-saving features.
So if you're on the iPhone, obviously download it through just the App Store. And then you've got Google as well. Download the app through Google as well with Androids as well. But on the app, they've also got a bot feature now.
It's my favourite.
Why is that?
Oh, of course. Well, a chatbot's always good.
I know.
But, especially on an app, especially when I don't quite talk the language, I need a bit of help. So it's great that they put a lot of time into that.
Matt, we want to know, I hope you've had a long, hard think about this one, but what is the confession you'd like to bring to the Rexel confession booth today?
Well, I've always been over the years protected by the Limitation of Actions Act, which gives you 7 years. And I have confessed a lot of stuff on radio because, as we've been going on and on about that whole sort of, you might as well be yourself. But I realised there's one thing that I did once that I'm not proud of, but I also love the fact I did it. I vacillate between how I feel about it. And it might seem minute to you, but I'm a road cyclist. I love it. I am a middle-aged guy in Lycra. I'm not particularly ace at it, but it's just my jam. I love having a coffee and talking bullshit afterwards and all that sort of stuff. But on Beach Road in particular, it can get pretty hairy and stuff. And when I was doing radio hours, often I would go out by myself in the afternoons because I couldn't get up early and ride where all the big bunches go and stuff like that. And like, I don't know, there's a bit of a red mist that comes down over me. I've been hit twice by cars and been in the Alfred and had broken vertebrae and stuff, right? So you got to ride a bit defensive aggressive. And on this particular, it must have been sort of like a late dusk afternoon. I was going along Beach Road. Is it Brighton Road where there's a whole lot of set of lights before Elwood? This is obviously an international podcast, so a lot of people won't know what I'm talking about. And this guy, old guy, in a Mercedes convertible, golden Mercedes convertible, quite an old one, sort of went past me and then veered in, right? And in the passenger seat with his wife, she had the high coiffed hair with sort of a bit of a purple tinge, fur coat. Right?
I think it was Brighton, yeah.
And yeah, classic, like peak Brighton. And he had the blazer on, right? And then the light went red. So I pulled up next to him on the inside and just rested my hand on the thing. And I said, "Are you right there, mate? You know you could kill me if you just veered in and knocked that." And he goes, "How dare you? You're a menace to the roads, you cyclists." Right? Like a cliche. And I said, "I beg your pardon?" And then the light went green and he just went, right? And I was like, and then he started like stop starting on his brakes and stuff. Like it was getting a bit like that. And I'm thinking, oh, mate. And they're obviously on their way out to somewhere fancy for dinner or whatever. I'm thinking, dude, you know, I think you've been banging this chick for close to 60 years. You're not impressing her. Why are you doing this? Anyway, so we pull up so I'm sort of going slowly going, oh, I don't want to pull up next to him again or whatever. Then he starts to reverse back at me, right? And I was like, oh, my God, right? What? So I just jump up on the nature strip and he's looking at me in the rear vision, right? I'm like, mate, just go. Just stop, right? And he starts swearing, "You cyclists, you young fucking idiots." Blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay, no worries. Let him go. I always, think, usually, as I said, I'm a bit red mist, so let him go. Get to the next lights, right? And he's still like, whoa, just, and I'm behind him, I'm like, okay, I know what I'm going to do here. So I emptied my water bottle, right? Rode around up to next to his side. So it's a convertible, right? He's sitting there with his arms on the steering wheel and just filled his lap.
The window was open.
No, it was convertible, no roof.
Oh, the convertible. Oh, sorry.
Filled his lap. So wherever he was going out to dinner or whatever, it would have looked like he pissed his pants like an old man who was incontinent. And I was like, and then, Jesus, did I ride fast. I reckon I set my, they didn't have Strava back then, but I reckon I set my PB, went through all those back streets and stuff.
There's a lot of lights around there
But I was like, and it's not the worst thing you could do, but I was just
it could have been a different kind of beverage.
But I figure when you're an old man, incontinence is a bit of a sore point, and that I think I nailed it.
Well done.
Well done. Well, Josh, what do you reckon? Do you reckon he wins the little reward?
I think he wins the Rexall little mystery box I've given.
Can you bring that out?
Connor, can you bring the Rexall gifts out?
This is like World of Sport.
Yeah, there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, we talked about.
Here we go.
We talked about ad reads before. Wait till you see this.
Is Matt going to open this, or is he?
Up to you, Matt. There's a few goodies in there from our good friends at Rexall, but for the dos&d listeners.
Oh, there you go. It's already open.
I think the best part in there is that chocolate, because that chocolate, I'm actually not taking the piss here, is actually quite hard to get.
Dig down to the bottom there. There's a
there
nice
we
little
go.
block of chocolate.
What is it?
This is amazing because I never got free crap sent into me in radio.
Never.
Thanks, Rexall, for the crap.
Oh, no. How exciting. Look at this.
The sarcasm in his voice.
Hang on. Lindt Dubai-style chocolate.
Yes.
It's 50 degrees in Dubai most of the time. So what is it, just melted?
I don't know, but it's hard to get a hold of.
Chocolate yogurt.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Now, we're just getting started. So let's bring out, and you might, when you bring these out, Connor, you can take the previous one away. Where do you want to start, Connor? You're going to bring out the Milkman, are you?
Oh, here we go.
All right, here he is.
Milkman Australia, Matt. They're all things male grooming, leading the way in a natural way, mind you. So they've given you, I think, the 5 different natural deodorants and scents. So you'll be taking that home with you today, which you know what? It might be perfect for you to just chuck in the kit on the bike, chuck a bit of deodorant when you get to the cafe.
Oh, for sure.
A few different scents there for you, mate. But what else does Milkman do?
My sons, they just, they stink. They smell.
Oh, well, there you go.
How old are your boys?
No, as in like they put so much fragrance and stuff on these days. And it's like, it's like I'm walking past 2 separate public toilets. Like it's that intense, sweet sort of.
Yeah. And
so this
I don't know what your sons use, but I'm sure it's not this natural good stuff.
Yes.
And sometimes the other stuff can be a bit overbearing, like you say.
I think they were like, can we get sued on here? I think, is it Lynx? Is that the one?
Lynx.
With all those, wonderfully sort of modern
Forever
descriptions
chemicals.
they have. Yeah, but also like what they call them, like
Africa.
bitch destroyer and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Very aggressive.
Very in-betweeners.
Yeah.
But Dos, where do we go for Milkman?
Milkmanaustralia.com, and they're doing something special, which is 20% off if you use the code dos&d.
Yeah, I love the hair powder, man.
There'll
That's
be
my
some
favourite.
free stuff on eBay in about an hour.
Well, do you want some more free stuff? Bring out the next one for us. Connor, what do you got there? You got Mitch Dowd. So Mitch Dowd, they also own Russell Athletic,
Right.
Matt. So
they were
they've-
famous for the boxer shorts, right?
Yeah,
Mitch Dowd.
You've got a pair
you've got
right
some,
now.
You've got some.
Oh,
You've
wow.
got some socks and jocks there, mate. It's just like Christmas Day, but we've
Holy
actually got
Moses.
some pajamas for you to give off air as well. But Mitch Dowd, everything you guys need when it comes to pajamas, socks, jocks, the underwear too, very comfy, bamboo. And
Right.
for the Dos&D
No
listeners,
splinters?
no splinters, no
Right.
splinters.
I've got a pair of Mitch Dowds on as we speak.
But
so.
if you head to mitchdowd.com.au and use the code DOS&D40, you can get 40% off, DOS. 40% off all
40%?
products.
You know what? Whenever you say that every week, I pretend to be surprised, even though I know. It's
Even though
40%.
you've made the most of that code.
I know.
I heard. Yeah.
You're wearing the jocks. You've clearly
Exactly.
Oh, trust me.
I've capitalised.
Geez, they backed the truck in for DOS the other day, I can tell you that. Now, Sup, Connor, you want to bring that in too?
So Sup, our friends at Sup.
Connor's getting his steps up. That's the main thing.
Now Sup are sending you
Okay.
home with their high performance gummy range.
Yes.
They're leading the way in all things high performance gummies. So visit supplements.com now to shop and use the code DOS&D for 30% off as well.
So what have you got in front of you there, Matt?
I've got the pre-workout.
Ooh.
Yeah,
These
I
taste
tried some
beautiful, by the way.
pre-workout once a long time ago when it was just coming in and I didn't sleep for 3 days. And it was blue. I'm like, that's not a natural colour. So this looks nice and refined.
Well, they're sending you home. They're very, very generous, our friends at Sup. So inside your goodie bag, which you're about to get, they've actually got 5 different packets. So they're all for...
wow.
I think there's creatine.
Creatine.
Yeah, got creatine here.
L-carnitine. What are some of the other ones?
We'll have to check.
We'll have to check them out.
They're all
But,
different flavours. They taste
Gee,
beautiful.
I love the
but
research you guys do on the show.
you can snack on
Well, you
these
can
things.
also get them from Coles, Woolies, Chemist Warehouse, and obviously online is where you get the discount
Is this
code.
going to make me faster and fitter? Is that
Yeah,
the point?
Absolutely. Give it a go. Let us
Okay.
know. The Sup, they're like Dos said, they're when you're buying your Big Freeze beanies, you can also get yourself
I grew up
some
in the 80s. We were taught not to take lollies from strange men. So
Healthy
But I'll
lollies.
go with it.
Healthy lollies.
And then finally,
There's
Matt,
more.
This is just a bit of a thank you from us. A Dos&D tote bag with all the goodies inside.
You want to
mate.
grab
So
those ones for
you
Matt?
take them away from him, but mate, you don't have to go through it all. But inside there, if you like your golf, there's some golf accessories in there.
Oh, wow.
Some gloves, some tees, some balls from our naming rights, Fleet Plan Hire Solutions. And of course, Tour Edge as well, and then the rest of the Mitch Dowd and the Sup stuff. But mate,
Amazing.
And now the infomercial is over.
now
So-
we're done.
But Chris Kringle is sorted.
That's it. Well, your boys might be very happy tonight. But mate, it's just our little way of saying thank you.
Thank you
We
so
know-
much. That's very kind.
Well, we know how busy you are, and especially this time of the year. So we really appreciate you taking the time to come in today.
feel quite honoured that you've made the time throughout this busy period because
Oh, no. It was
you
fun.
guys.
It's my lunch hour.
What a way to spend your
I
lunch.
know you got
hour.
some gummies for your lunch, but
Yeah.
yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thanks,
mate. Thank you.
boys.
And maybe
pleasure to be
can we
here.
maybe just have one last word about the big freeze and FightMND and maybe a last little message?
Well, I guess the thing is, like, we often like to think that we're good people, right? But I think Neil Danaher, as the Australian of the Year, completely encapsulates what we all want to be, right? So, which is, if the chips are down, I wouldn't give up, right? I'd actually go, how can I help other people who are as bad or as worse as me, right? I think the other thing is that his determination to never give up, like just keep going. That's one of the best things you can do, and that's kind of what we're primed to do. And then also to have a bit of a cheeky sense of humour around things and not take yourself too seriously. To me, that's what epitomises him as Australian of the Year. But it also is the reason we sell so many beanies, because so many other people are like that. And our motto is, it takes people, and it does. Like, selling a beanie $25 at a time, you got to sell a hell of a lot to get up into the millions of dollars we've put into research. But it also isn't much for you to put to the side, put a smile on your face, and go, I'm part of something bigger. And we thank you so much for doing that. So as I said, bigfreeze.com.au, get the digital beanie if your sock drawer's full of beanies. And that will all be going to our great big campaign over this weekend. But yeah, there's socks, there's dog toys at Bunnings, there's lots of other things. But I think what you really get is that acknowledgement when you see someone else in a beanie going, yep, we're behind this.
Absolutely.
And
Well
we
said,
couldn't be
Matt.
more grateful.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much.